going on? Consciouztv, your favorite breakdown commentator, CTV, and we are back as promised, girl, to get into the shocking and explosive lawsuit filed against rapper and Bronx native Fat Joe by his former hype man, Terrance T.A. Dixon. My God, today. Before we get into the things, I need you guys to go ahead and run those likes up. You guys know that Conscious crew members have not been getting notified. So we need all the likes. If you're in the building, part of the replay gang, the Bush baby, active with me in real time, please slide me a like. It don't cost you nothing. It's free 99. Like. This helps with YouTube's algorithm, but more importantly, YouTube's notification system. All right. If you guys also enjoy everything that we do here on the platform, baby, and what the Kang is Kangin, you guys can donate to the Cash App, $Consciouztv, and or paypal.me/ConsciouzTV. All donation information is in the description box as well as the scroll below. Make sure that you guys also are subscribed. If you are new here, shout out to the 53.5K and counting. Teamwork meets the dream work. And last but not least, please share the stream out to wherever it is you have digital community, whether that be your YouTube community wall, your Snapchat, your MySpace, the dark side of Twitter, Tumblr, or your personal OF. I don't really give a damn where you and Fatly the link. Just let them whores know that we're live, and we're certainly in color. And with no further ado, let's go ahead and push on through.
I know a place where you can recharge your soul.
Baby, that's Consciouztv.
And in the midst of brokenness, he gon' see your asshole.
Baby, that's Consciouztv.
You gon' heal, you gon' laugh and catch a little shade.
Ooh, girl.
Y'all know he be slaying, y'all better stop playing. Come hear what he's saying.
Ladies and gentlemen.
What's going on, Conscious crew? Happy Thursday. You guys know we just got off of a live stream getting into the deets of everything going on with the shocking lawsuit filed against Tyler Perry, girl, and his lawyers done responded, and Wendy Williams and Kevin Hunter and Guardianship, girl. So if you missed that live stream, please definitely check out that live stream, girl. We got into a lot of things, okay? Before we get into what we're here today to talk about, let me go ahead and shout out to the Conscious crew. Hey, Sherry, what's going on with Shonda? What's going on, Keeney? Hey, Tiff, who says you got the notifications finally, child, okay? When y'all frequent the content, then YouTube puts that into their algorithm, and then they start notifying y'all accordingly. So, you know, the more you keep up with the platform, the more you're going to get those notifications. Also, what helps to get notifications is if you are subscribed to a bunch of platforms that you really don't frequent, you really don't watch the content anymore, go and unsubscribe from the channels you no longer watch, because when you are subscribed to too many idle platforms, it will take up your notification space when it comes to the platforms that you do want to keep up with. So you may have to go through your subscriptions and, you know, unsubscribe accordingly so that, yes, you can regulate your notification system on YouTube as well. All right. What's going on, Shayla? Hey, Tiff. Hey, Sin. What's going on, Kimana? Hey, Ebony. Hey, Rumors and Tea. What's going on, Bill? Hey, y'all. Happy Thursday, everybody. So while we was live, you guys, you know, we got breaking news that Fat Joe is being sued, girl. Oh, my God. And the claims are completely through the roof. Shocking-ish. All right. Fat Joe is being sued by former hype man who officially files a $20 million lawsuit accusing Fat Joe of having sex with minors and paying for a 15-year-old girl's BBL, forcing him to participate in humiliating sex acts and more. Okay, quote, more than 4,000 actual acts to maintain his standing. All right, now, before we get into the thick of this, you guys may know that Fat Joe had actually sued this hype man first. So this lawsuit from the hype man may be retaliatory, all right? If you've been living under a rock, let's get into a bit of a backstory first and foremost, all right? Fat Joe, okay, this was earlier this year, suing his ex-hype man, who's of course suing him now, for defamation after he called the rapper a pedophile. Fat Joe has filed a hefty lawsuit against his former hype man for slandering him on social media, claiming the guy and his lawyer are trying to shake him down for a payday. All right. Oh my God. Okay. So mind you guys, I have not been keeping up with the Fat Joe multiverse craziness at all. So right out of the gate, it appears that what had happened was Fat Joe's ex-hype man had sent Fat Joe a demand letter and was attempting to get a payout and some monetary benefit from the rapper prior to officially filing the lawsuit, which you guys know, that can happen. Typically before a civil suit is filed, a defamation suit is filed, sometimes the plaintiff will put the defendant on notice, give them an opportunity to pretty much settle the matter before you go through the rigmarole of a full trial and getting the courts involved, which can be very expensive for everybody. It can be even more costly for the defendant if the defendant is in fact found guilty. So sometimes defendants, whether they're guilty or not, will settle out of court just to avoid the negative publicity from the lawsuit, and for two, will pay out the plaintiff also if they're in fact guilty. This keeps the situation under wraps, under the blanket, etc. Typically, NDAs are signed in order to conceal the details of the litigation and the claims, provide some confidentiality, and life goes on. All right. So it appears that Terrance T.A. Dixon, the ex-hypeman of Joe, sent a demand letter prior to officially filing, attempting to get coin up out of Fat Joe. And what Fat Joe did was pull a damn Jay-Z, honey, and pulled his whole card and filed suit against his ass, okay? Claiming that he was pretty much being shaken down, etc. Now, what's interesting about that is Terrance T.A. Dixon is being represented by no other than greasy ass Tyrone fucking Blackburn, whose literal legal profile is in shambles, bitch. Okay, win a case. Tyrone Parks. Okay, Tyrone Blackburn has so many sanctions and reprimandings against him from judges, etc., for his clown antics that I'm surprised the man even can still practice damn law at this point. He literally is no better than Tony Busby, Gloria Allred, Lisa Bloom, the so-called celebrity attorneys who tend to actually do more damage to their clients' cases than they do any good. Most of Tyrone Blackburn's clients are hung up in their cases or are actually being found liable, such as one of his clients, Sabrina Peterson, who sued T.I. and Tiny for a plethora of distressing claims, abuse, and sexual assault. And you guys remember Sabrina led that whole march against T.I. and Tiny, and all these alleged victims came forward, and all those cases were thrown out for one reason or another, statute of limitations expiring, blah, 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 blah. Sabrina's own lawsuit was dismissed and thrown out, and T.I. and Tiny pulled a reverse Uno and sued this bitch. And now she owes them a bunch of fucking money for attorney fees, etc., blah, blah, blah. Tyrone Blackburn also represented my boo, Jennifer Huff, who is the 1994 grape survivor of Nicki Minaj's husband, Kenneth Petty, who she filed a lawsuit against a few years ago for gang stalking, harassment, etc. And Tyrone Blackburn ended up fucking up the paperwork on Nicki Minaj, and they had to end up retracting that lawsuit because of technicalities made by Tyrone Blackburn. And the case has just dragged out and dragged out and dragged out and dragged out. And Jennifer is still waiting on her vindication, child. Okay. Tyrone Blackburn also was the one who is representing Lil Rod against P. Diddy. Remember the second salacious lawsuit that came out against Diddy following Cassie's, where Lil Rod's lawsuit accused Diddy of a bunch of things, subjecting him to homoeroticism, harassment, making him watch queer porn. Also talked about an alleged shooting that took place that left a dead body in the bathroom of the studio that he was working out of on behalf of Diddy. And then come to find out none of that shit was true. There was a event involving a shooting at the studio, but it actually took place like a block or two away from the actual studio. It did not take place in P. Diddy's studio. It was unrelated to P. Diddy in any way. And then remember, Tyrone Blackburn and Lil Rod had put a screenshot of the alleged corn that he was showed by P. Diddy of Stevie J. Allegedly, the claim in the lawsuit was that Diddy had showed Lil Rod a clip of Stevie J having SCX with a man and this, that, and the third. And, you know, he was pretty much, you know, being seduced and all of this with this type of shit. So they put a screenshot from that alleged corn, which I was thinking even at the time, how the fuck did you get a screenshot your damn phone and take a screenshot of the corn that you was watching? No. Well, come to find out, that was also a ruse, because the actual guy in the screenshot who looked similar to Stevie J actually was not Stevie J, but was a gay adult entertainer who came out and said, baby, that's not Stevie J. Bitch, that's me. Okay? Tyrone Blackburn knew it was bullshit from the beginning. Lil Rod knew it was foolishness from the beginning. They literally put just lies in their lawsuit against Diddy, etc. The courts have literally chastised Tyrone Blackburn for sensationalizing claims against public figures, for misusing the media in the public, and attempting to litigate his case in the court of public opinion. So Tyrone Blackburn, as far as I'm concerned, is a clown. He's also the same attorney that's representing Dwayne Youngblood, who is the defendant in TD Jake's defamation lawsuit. And Dwayne Youngblood is losing that lawsuit by a hamstring at this goddamn point, girl. TD Jakes is tearing Dwayne Youngblood ass up in the litigation, girl. So the fact that this is who is even representing Fat Joe's accuser is that already takes, girl, 50 points off of Terrance's credit score, girl. Okay, I can almost already not even take this shit seriously, girl. I know this is a shit show, it's a clown show, and I don't expect for 70% of the claims in this suit to actually be genuine, simply because Tyrone Blackburn is on goddamn board. Okay, but we're going to get into that anyway. Okay, so the write-up goes that Fat Joe has filed a hefty lawsuit against his former hype man for slandering him on social media, claiming the guy and his lawyer are trying to shake him down for a payday. TMZ Hip Hop obtained court docs filed by Fat Joe on Tuesday, in which he claims that his former hype man, Terrance T.A. Dixon, is trying to collect money he didn't earn and resorted to publicly calling the rapper a pedophile on social media when he didn't get his way. Okay, they provide screenshot from the hype man's Instagram, which we're going to visit in a few. And I think the caption is, "This is the dance the sucker do after getting his ass licked. Don't have too much fun on somebody else's yacht, you fat, soggy titty, taco meat stomach. You ain't no something ninja. FOH, you are the number one sucker." Okay, so this is supposed to be a reference to Fat Joe here. According to the lawsuit, Dixon claimed on social media Fat Joe flew a 16-year-old girl across the state lines for SEX and posted the allegation alongside a picture of Joe, Diddy, and DJ Khaled. All right. Here is a post from Raheem Shabazz. Sloppy Joe's ghostwriter is speaking out along with former employee. This nasty work. And then it is a clip of Rashawn, or whatever the fuck his name is here. Joe's legal counsel claims that the allegations were made as part of a money grab generated by Dixon's attorney, Tyrone Blackburn, who's also representing Diddy's accuser, Lil Rodney, in a separate suit. Okay, now here's the post from the hype man. Lil Joey Cap doing his edophile dance. He's diving looking for little girls. Fat Joe, you sucker. Wow. The lawsuit details how Joe and Dixon began working together in 2006 when Joe offered him a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be part of his team, complete with compensation, luxurious travel, touring, and other fringe benefits that accompany being in a superstar rapper's inner circle. Joe says the partnership ended amicably in 2019 and says he never heard any money complaints for 6 years until Dixon began posting on social media with complaints he should have been paid more for his past work. He says Dixon lawyered up with Blackburn in March and fired off a legal demand letter. Okay, that's that. Demand letter asking for compensation as a ghostwriter on several of Joe's tracks. When those demands weren't met, Fat Joe says that Dixon upped the ante by spreading salacious lies about Joe and falsely claiming Joe blocked him from obtaining outside funding for his own record label startup. All right. Here's a post from Storm Monroe, shop at Storm Monroe, who presented a post. You smash Erica Mena, your man's baby mama sucker 100 because she was throwing it at you, and I told you once again, chill. She's trying to put you at odds with her boyfriend. For you to entertain that or think about it was super foul, and you call yourself a brother. I'm the real book. Okay, I think Storm was sharing one of the hype man stories. At Fat Joe, didn't you make passive aggressive threats to me, trying to put fear in my heart? Didn't you tell me there's no life outside of Terror Squad? And I see what you did to Cuban with blackballing him. Didn't you admit to me that you got his face cut? People, please understand this is deep and very personal. Fat Joe, didn't you say Cuban was foul because he so-called slept with Pun's wife, which wasn't true? But you see the narrative you was trying to push to destroy his image. But what about you? Fat Joe, the longer this goes on, the nastier it's going to get. For real, I'm not playing with you. Fat Joe, once again, he reported my account. It's in investigation mode. Shots to make this right, but the greed in your heart wouldn't allow you to do what's right. You can't stand to see another man shine, especially the ones that really helped you and deserve to be taken care of. I can't lie. It hurts my heart to see, girl. All right. So the hype man has been on Joe's neck for a long time, girl. When I went briefly through his IG, girl, you know, he was on Joe's neck as far back as 2023 and probably beyond. All right. Blackburn tells TMZ Hip Hop the new lawsuit is just a cover-up attempt and isn't backing down, saying Joe filed a baseless lawsuit in an effort to soften the blow of what's to come. It won't work. Fat Joe has a lot of explaining to do. Fat Joe fiercely defends his name, telling us, quote, these allegations are completely false and part of a criminal conspiracy orchestrated between a disgruntled former hype man and his attorney. These two individuals have been scheming together to extort me with their elaborate and ludicrous demands, changing by the day. The relentless threats, harassment, and defamation I've endured as they peddle salacious lies are utterly deplorable. I'm taking legal action to expose their misconduct, and I am fully confident that the facts will reveal This is nothing more than a deceptive and desperate scheme. Fat Joe's celebrity attorney, Joe Tacopina, is slamming the lawsuit altogether and tells TMZ Hip Hop, quote, the allegations against Mr. Cartagena are completely false and part of a criminal extortion scheme orchestrated by an attorney who a federal judge recently condemned for abusing the court system to harass and pressure defendants. Okay, that's more on Tyrone Black Ass Burn. Quote, Mr. Cartagena will not be intimidated by fabricated claims, lies about witnesses, or shameless threats. We are taking immediate legal action to expose this fraudulent scheme, and we will hold all parties responsible fully accountable. Tacopina also sent Blackburn a cease and desist, reminding him of his recent misconduct. A judge warned him over in a Diddy lawsuit. Okay, so this is the backstory to what is going on. All right, so Terrance sent, on behalf of his attorney Blackburn, Joe, a demand letter letting him know that he's being put on notice. He is looking to file for X reason, and that he's open to resolving the matter out of court. Joe said, fuck you, filed against Terrance first, and now Terrance has indeed filed his own $20 million lawsuit, which I'm just going to call a countersuit because that's really what it is, against Joe. All right. Terrance also, after publishing his lawsuit, took to his IG stories to say this: you made the first move, and your first move could be your last move. All right. Also, y'all geared up. Your boy's ready. It's your day. All right. So this is Terrance T.A. Dixon's IG. You can see posts he's made in reference to Joe throughout the years. Here's a picture of Diddy and Joe and DJ Khaled. Terrance says, Fat Joe and at DJ Khaled, what happened? Now y'all going to act like y'all don't know Diddy. Sucker shit. Y'all don't want to be a part of that baby oil, I see, but don't act like y'all wasn't with him. What happened to Toast to Brothers? Fat Joe, Nikki was underage when you flew her across state lines and out of the country. So once again, more claims. Okay, more of those underage monologues. All right. Here's a post he did of Fat Joe again on, I believe, probably Drink Champs. He captions this post about Joe. This is the guy, Lil Joey, that's saying everyone is lying on him. Joe, you lost in court to I Am Lizaria's. So you want this lady to take back the truth to make you look good? You sucker. Joe, you had so many chances to put on artists. How many artists were signed to you that never reached their full potential? How many? Slimmy Pink King. Wow. Calling Joe the damn Latin Diddy, child. Oh God. You know, half of his cheeks out there, child. Okay, so he's going on and on and on, girl. He's been on Old Boy's neck for a while. What's going on, Judge Shady Courts? Hey, boo. What's going on, Lamessa? Hey, Miss Spicer. What's going on, you guys? Hey, everybody. I'm in here, girl. Working, y'all. So here is the Hype Men's official complaint, you guys. Trigger warning, child. Trigger warning, girl. There's even a disclaimer on the goddamn complaint. All right. This is filed by Terrance Dixon, a.k.a. T.A. The plaintiff is Joseph Antonio Cartagena, a.k.a. Fat Joe, Peter Pistol Pete Torres, Richard Rich Player, oh God, Erica Giuliano, Marira, Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, Rock Nation. Oh God, here we go, bitch. I don't know why y'all be tugging on Jay-Z's neck like this. Baby, y'all know Jay-Z gonna take your ass to task, baby. Okay? People on all the smoke, girl. Okay? Everything he couldn't give Solange ass on that elevator, girl. He be giving you niggas in this lawsuit, girl. I don't know why y'all keep tugging over there on Rock Nation neck. Okay? And John Doe's 1 through 10, and Jane Doe's 1 through 10, and ABC Corporation's 1 through 10. Okay, trigger warning. This document contains highly graphic information of a sexual nature, including sexual assault. Additionally, there are graphic details of sex trafficking and other criminal activity orchestrated by the defendants. Girl, let's get into it, you guys. And you guys, please run the likes up. We need all the likes. Run them up, y'all. All right. Plaintiff Terrance Dixon, aka TA, buying through his undersigned counsel, Blackburn Law, PLLC, brings a civil lawsuit against defendants Joseph Antonio, aka Fat Joe, Pistol Pete, all them folk that we listed in the above, for asserting civil claims for violations of Traffic Victims Protection Act, the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations, oh my God, RICO, and related violations under New York, Florida law, including unjust enrichment, quantum merit, fraudulent concealment, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and money laundering. This action arises from a deliberate and sustained campaign of exploitation wherein an internationally recognized entertainer manipulates and abuses a creative partner through an organized network of enforcers, associates, and shell companies. Defendants systematically engage in a coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, sexual manipulation, violent intimidation, and psychological coercion against plaintiff Dixon, all intended to enrich defendant Fat Joe and his associates while deliberately suppressing, silencing, and erasing plaintiff's substantial creative, artistic, and commercial contributions, which were foundational to defendant Fat Joe's professional success and personal brand. My God, today, for 16 years, we're going to skip through some of the preliminary stuff. For more than 16 years, plaintiff Terrance Dixon dedicated his talent, labor, and loyalty to defendant Fat Joe. During that period, plaintiff acted not only as Fat Joe's hype man, but also contributed as a lyricist, background vocalist, security team member, and creative collaborator. Despite plaintiff's integral contributions, defendant Fat Joe systematically excluded him from fair compensation, proper attribution, and the substantial royalties and profits generated from his creative labor. Instead, plaintiff was consistently underpaid, denied songwriting credits, and deliberately concealed from royalties and back-end compensation. Fat Joe, plaintiff Dixon, contributed lyrics, vocals, and creative direction to numerous commercially successful songs performed and monetized by Fat Joe, including but not limited to hits Congratulations, Ice Cream, and Money Over Itches. Dixon's creative fingerprints, distinctive voice, and stage presence are embedded in multiple critically acclaimed and commercially lucrative albums from which defendant Fat Joe continues to profit without recognition or fair compensation to plaintiff. Defendant Fat Joe's exploitation extended beyond financial fraud. He employed his industry influence and power dynamics to subject plaintiff to psychological coercion and economic control, forcing plaintiff into humiliating situations, including SEX acts performed under duress and surveillance, accompanied by threats of abandonment in foreign countries if plaintiff refused compliance. My God, today, y'all run those likes up, run those likes up, girl. This is nasty work here. Fat Joe deliberately withheld travel accommodations, misappropriated prior DM payments, and exploited plaintiff's financial dependence and professional loyalty to ensure submission, silence, and domination. Assisting Fat Joe in maintaining his criminal enterprise were key associates and enforcers, including Pistol Pete, Taurus, and defendant Richard Rich Player. Taurus and Richard actively engaged in physical threats, violent assaults, and intimidation tactics on Fat Joe's explicit instructions, sustaining a climate of fear and coercion against plaintiff and others who challenged the enterprise's control. Run the lights up, you guys. Defendant Erica further facilitated Fat Joe's fraudulent schemes through unauthorized legal representation, fraudulent corporate filings, and the creation of deceptive corporate structures that enabled the concealment and diversion of proceeds owed the plaintiff and the laundering of illicit funds. Corporate defendant Slate Inc. and Sneaker Addict Touring LLC served as instrumental vehicles for the enterprise's sophisticated financial fraud and money laundering schemes. Slate Inc. operated as the central financial conduit, systematically concealing illicit proceeds. At the same time, Sneaker Addict Touring LLC fraudulently secured federal Paycheck Protection Program PPP loans by falsifying business activities and diverting federal funds into the enterprise. Defendants Roc Nation LLC, the current management and representative entity for defendant Fat Joe, knowingly participated in concealing, transferring, and manipulating plaintiff's authorship rights and royalty interests. Roc Nation deliberately facilitated Fat Joe's unlawful conduct of filing a meritless lawsuit against plaintiff and his counsel to intimidate, harass, and obstruct plaintiff's legitimate claims against Fat Joe and his co-defendants, my God, today. Roc Nation, through its CEO, oh my God, girl, here come that Desiree Perez, extracted 10% of all revenue generated by defendant Fat Joe and his associated businesses, including through joint management of business records, oversight of touring revenue, and enforcing the policies plaintiff was required to follow during his work with defendant. So, of course, this means that Roc Nation is going to have to officially respond as co-defendants in this lawsuit as well. Hold on, girl. I need to edit my title, girl. Let me get over to this YouTube chat. Y'all run them likes up, girl. Oh, girl, we got 90 likes on 150 people in the building. Y'all get these likes up. Get these motherfucking likes up. Let me see. Fat Joe and Roc Nation. This is a mess, y'all. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. I changed my damn title. All right, get the likes up, get the likes up, get the likes up, get the likes up. All right, and we're back. As an aside, according to accountant Doe and former manager Doe, defendant Fat Joe stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from Roc Nation. Wow, from Roc Nation and their CEO Desiree Perez when he accepted cash payments of up to $500K for performances he secured independent of Roc Nation. Upon information and belief, defendant Fat Joe's actions went against his agreement with Ms. Perez. Defendant Fat Joe alongside Taurus, Erica, Slate Inc., Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, and Roc Nation created and sustained a deliberately exploitative arrangement in which plaintiff was systematically denied proper compensation, authorship recognition, and lawful recourse. So while Terrance is on one hand accusing Roc Nation, aka Desiree Perez, the CEO, of being in cahoots with Fat Joe, he's also equally accusing Fat Joe of also scheming and scamming her in Roc Nation as well. Baby, they say there is no honor amongst damn thieves. Over more than 16 years, defendants collectively enriched themselves through plaintiffs' uncompensated labor, creativity, and professional contributions, generating substantial royalties, performance fees, and brand equity from which plaintiffs received virtually no benefit. Additionally, plaintiffs engaged in deliberate tax fraud schemes by submitting intentionally inflated and fraudulent income reports to the IRS, significantly overstating the actual compensation plaintiff received. This deliberate misrepresentation of plaintiff's income was designed to conceal defendants' extensive wage theft, artificially inflate plaintiff's tax liabilities, expose him to unwarranted tax audits and penalties, and systematically obscure the financial realities underlying plaintiff's exploited labor. My God, today. Fat Joe criminal and fraudulent conduct is not speculative. It has been corroborated by firsthand witnesses, recorded phone calls, and documented evidence in the possession of accountant Doe, who personally handled the financial affairs of Fat Joe and confirmed that 1, plaintiff was intentionally excluded from formal payment systems. 2, W-2s were falsely inflated and reported to the IRS to create a fictitious paper trail. 3, Fat Joe personally collected $600K and $200K in cash at different times from the UPNYC retail stores. 4, Roc Nation received 10% of all revenue from Fat Joe's businesses. And 5, numerous financial records were fabricated or withheld to avoid paying plaintiff the royalties and compensation he was motherfucking owed. Further confirming this illicit nature of defendant Fat Joe's operation, employees in UPNYC, a small sneaker and apparel store, routinely flaunted luxury goods, including G-Wagons, Range Rovers, Rolexes, and designer clothing, despite earning little more than New York's minimum wage. This conspicuous consumption combined with large volumes of cash-only transactions and a complete absence of legitimate revenue documentation reflects the store's role as a laundering front for the Fat Joe enterprise. Defendant Fat Joe earns an estimated $60,000 per month in royalties and at least $20,000 monthly in streaming revenue, none of which has ever been shared with plaintiff despite his significant authorship and performance contributions to the monetized songs. In one documented instance, defendant Fat Joe pocketed a $30,000 Live Nation performance check for the All the Way Up tour, money that was rightfully allocated for plaintiff's contribution. Fat Joe used those funds to pay off his back taxes owed to the IRS, as confirmed by a witness who was part of his management team at the time. Plaintiff was not only exploited financially, but also subjected to a wide spectrum of actual coercion, psychological control, forced exhibitionism, and surveillance-based humiliation, including being compelled to perform sex acts under observation directed by defendant in the presence of others. Tactics designed to control plaintiff's body, erode his autonomy, and ensure silence. These sex-based abuses were not private, incidental, or isolated. They were integral to the enterprise's culture of dominance and humiliation. Remember, we went over the psychology of abusers in the last live. Enforced by the defendant's associates such as Pistol Pete, JB, and others, and sustained across numerous tour locations, including Miami, North Carolina, Germany, Spain, and Wisconsin. Girl, he definitely, girl, is painting Fat Joe ass as the Latino Diddy girl for Shizzle, my nizzle. In Miami, on Market America's corporate yacht and at its mansion properties, the defendant orchestrated repeated orgies, the creation of fraudulent pay stubs, the use of W-2s while filing 1099s, and the concealment of payroll fraud for enterprise gain or textbook RICO predicate acts under mail wire fraud and tax fraud statutes. The scheme furthers the enterprise's coercive structure and is directly tied to financial exploitation. Plaintiff female dancers and minors. Defendant used his status as a corporate sponsor, celebrity influence, and financial control to compel plaintiff and others into degrading actual performances, often while defendant watched, recorded, or directed the encounters. These incidents occur under conditions that included the presence of corporate security staff, surveillance cameras, and defendant's management entourage, yet no intervention occurred supporting the inference that these acts were facilitated by and covered up by the broader enterprise and its affiliates. Defendants also use social media burner accounts, including Big and Dr. Zyvag, to issue veiled death threats and witness intimidation, such as 1, quote, "You love your family, right?" 2, "Fall back in 48 hours," and 3, "We let you live." These statements were interpreted by plaintiff and his legal team as part of a broader scheme to intimidate, silence, and obstruct plaintiff's participation in this case. These acts constitute violations of 18 U.S.C. Code 1512, witness tampering, and 18 U.S.C. Code and 875D, interstate threats, and fall squarely within the pattern of violent racketeering activity under the Civil RICO statute. In retaliation for asserting his rights, Roc Nation and defendant Fat Joe jointly filed a baseless lawsuit against plaintiff and his counsel. The complaint, riddled with procedural defects and legal inaccuracies, was filed for the sole purpose of intimidating the plaintiff, diverting judicial resources, and chilling his First Amendment right to seek redress. The retaliatory lawsuit was intended not to prevail on legal merit, but to create public confusion, burden plaintiff's counsel with discovery costs, and dissuade other victims and whistleblowers from coming forward with evidence of Fat Joe's enterprise activity. This conduct violates all these codes here you see listed. As part of a coordinated cover-up, defendant submitted ghost contracts and backdated split sheets to performing rights organizations including BMI and ASCAP, omitting plaintiff's authorship credits. These records were created after the commercial release of the music and falsely assigned 100% publishing rights to the defendant and his business entities. The fraudulent documents were designed to mislead royalty agencies, divert back-end payments, and erase plaintiff from the creative history of the works, even though plaintiff's vocals and lyrical contributions were readily identifiable on the tracks. These actions not only deprived plaintiff of at least $600,000 in projected royalties, but also ensured his exclusion from future licensing, catalog valuation, and digital revenue derived from streaming platforms. The fraudulent, backdated, and ghost contracts constitute predicate acts under all of those U.S. codes there. Conspiracy and falsifying business records along with wire fraud. My God, today. The enterprise's financial arm further engaged in systemic laundering and tax evasion, as evidenced by repeated cash disbursements of over $200K and $600K at a time, withdrawn from the UPNYC with no documented ledger, reporting mechanism, or tax compliance. Defendant Fat Joe's post-convicted tax conduct included repeated failure to report foreign earnings, the use of nominee entities, and cash-based laundering through corporate fronts reflects the sophistication and scope of the enterprise's concealment strategies. These acts of structured concealment, misappropriation, and intimidation represent a pattern of criminal conduct carried out through an ongoing association in that enterprise, meeting all elements under 18 U.S.C. Code and supporting both closed-ended and open-ended continuity under RICO. Damn! Jurisdiction and venue. Plaintiff claims arise under federal law, specifically the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and 1595 and the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. The court further possesses supplemental jurisdiction over plaintiffs' related state law claims, including unjust enrichment, quantum merit, fraudulent concealment, constructive trust, intentional infliction of emotional distress, assault, battery, fraud, conspiracy, unauthorized practice of law, and fraudulent financial reporting, according to 28 U.S.C. Code 1367. These claims are so intertwined and related to plaintiffs' federal claims that they form part of the same case or controversy under Article 3 of the United States Constitution. This court has personal jurisdiction over defendant Fat Joe, defendant Pistol Pete, Richard Rich Player, and Erica Juliana, defendant Rock Nation, Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, Slate Inc., and all remaining defendants according to NY Civil Procedure LR 302, as well as constitutional due process principles, because each defendant purposely conducted systematic, continuous, and substantial business transactions within this jurisdiction. The wrongful conduct and predicate acts alleged herein, including fraud, exploitation, financial manipulation, violent enforcement, and concealment of plaintiffs' creative contributions, occurred substantially and directly within the judicial district. During the relevant period, defendants conducted extensive commercial and artistic operations in the Southern District of New York, including but not limited to entering performance contracts, maintaining recording studios and corporate offices, receiving royalty and licensing income, orchestrating financial and tax fraud schemes, and directly facilitating the exploitation and suppression of plaintiffs' intellectual property rights, financial interests, and personal autonomy. Girl, this is crazy. Venue is proper in the Southern District of New York, according to U.S. Code 1391, and B, because of those things there. Therefore, this court is the appropriate and most convenient forum for adjudicating all claims asserted against each of the named defendants in this party. Okay, and here are the parties, of course, Terrance and Fat Joe. Okay. We already understand all of the claims against Fat Joe. Okay, Pistol Pete is an individual believed to reside in Bronx, New York, and Miami, Florida. Torres served as defendant Fat Joe's primary enforcer and street-level operations captain, responsible for executing violent directives, enforcing internal discipline, and maintaining order within Fat Joe's enterprise through fear, intimidation, and physical assault. Acting at the direction of Fat Joe, Torres coordinated and carried out acts of violence, threats of retaliation, and coercive control against perceived as disloyal, including plaintiff. Torres' involvement in the enterprise retaliatory operations is corroborated by audio recordings and witness statements, which document his efforts to orchestrate an ambush against plaintiff and his use of coded enterprise language, such as, quote, pound him out and catch up. Wow. To issue violent orders on defendant Fat Joe's behalf. Torres was not a peripheral actor, but a central figure in the enforcement hierarchy, entrusted with ensuring obedience through violence and reinforcing the enterprise's culture of silence, dominance, and fear. Richard Rich Player. This Pitry is an individual believed to reside in New York, Miami, Florida. Richard acts as Fat Joe's business manager and head of enforcement operations, coordinating threats, acts of violence, financial structuring, and retaliation against enterprise opponents, including plaintiff. Richard was directly involved in orchestrating threats and retaliatory actions targeting plaintiff, as documented through recorded communications. Miss Erica Juliana is an individual who, upon information and belief, resides in the state of Florida. Juliana illegally represented herself as a legal agent and counsel despite lacking proper authorization to practice law in the state of Florida. Okay, here's her alleged bar number, and she is not eligible apparently, and has delinquent fees under her name. Wow. She actively participated in creating and managing fraudulent corporate entities to conceal and launder the proceeds of the enterprise's illegal activities. Juliana's actions facilitated financial fraud, obstruction of justice, and unauthorized legal practice, causing direct injury to plaintiff. My God, now, bitch, this is Rico, girl. Jesus. Sneaker Addict Touring LLC is a Florida limited liability company owned, operated, and controlled by Fat Joe, utilized by Fat Joe's enterprise as a vehicle for fraudulent activities. Specifically, Sneaker Addict Touring LLC fraudulently obtained paycheck protection programs, aka PPP loans, under false pretenses representing non-existent or inflated business activities to misappropriate federal funds. Slate Inc. is a Florida-based corporate entity serving as the central financial conduit of the Fat Joe's enterprise. Slate Inc. facilitated the laundering of illicit funds derived from enterprise activities through structured financial transactions, including shell entities like Barat LLC, Woo Inc., and R4 Soul Valley LLC. Slate Inc.'s financial structuring was central to concealing income streams generated from plaintiffs' uncredited labor and fraudulent financial practices. ROC Nation is a Delaware limited liability with its principal place of business at said address there. ROC Nation manages defendant Fat Joe's business affairs and, upon information and belief, has taken control over his music catalog, publishing rights, and intellectual property since 2017. Plaintiff alleged that ROC Nation received 10% of all income earned by defendant Fat Joe and his companies, appointed a director who directly supervised plaintiff, acted as a joint employer by exercising control over plaintiff's labor and reporting structure, and aided and abetted the diversion of plaintiff's royalties, the concealment of authorship, and the retaliation against plaintiff and his counsel through a baseless motherfucking lawsuit. My God, today, happy Juneteenth, everyone. And thumbs up the video. We need all the thumbs up. Defendants John Doe's 1 through 10 and Jane Doe's 1 through 10 are natural persons whose identities are currently unknown to plaintiff, but are believed to have aided, abetted, participated in, or benefited from the unlawful actions described herein. These individuals may include members of defendant's management team, booking agents, publishing administrators, tour managers, accountants, business associates, or other parties responsible for executing or concealing defendants' exploitative conduct. Plaintiff will amend a complaint to name these parties as discovery progresses. Defendant ABC corporations 1 through 10 are corporate entities, limited liability companies, partnerships, and or business organizations whose true names and identities are unknown to plaintiff. These entities may have contracted with plaintiff or defendant, issued compensation, received performance or licensing income, or held intellectual property rights concerning plaintiff's work. Upon information and belief, these entities either A, participated in misappropriating plaintiff's labor and intellectual property, or B, have records, funds, or rights derived from plaintiff's uncredited contributions. Plaintiff will amend a complaint to identify these entities when their identities are ascertained. Not Fat Joe out here calling FBA and ADOS frauds and his ass running a whole his ass over here got a whole RICO going on, girl. My God. Twirling of the statute of limitations discovery rule. Okay. We don't have to, let me skim through this. This is just all technical shit. All right, let's get to the factual background here. From 2005 to 2022, plaintiff worked in a close relationship with defendant and key members of defendant's enterprise, including defendants Pete, Richard, Erica, Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, and Rock Nation and Slate Inc. Over 16 years, plaintiff contributed substantially to defendant's creative output, stage shows, brand development, and operational logistics, enabling defendant to build a multi-million-dollar public persona and enterprise. Plaintiff undertook these responsibilities without a formal contract, clear employment designation, or fair compensation. These conditions were deliberately crafted and maintained by defendants to extract labor while denying plaintiff the financial reputational benefits of his work. Plaintiff roles extended far beyond the duties of conventional hype man. He consistently performed the following: co-write lyric structured hooks and recorded background vocals used on released tracks, performed at more than 200 live shows, serving as a primary crowd energizer and onstage counterpart to defendant, managed travel logistics, including equipment, transport, personal security, and emergency arrangements, acted as defendant's bodyguard and handler, during domestic and international tours, and contributed to branding strategies, music concepts, and studio ideation critical to album development. Fat Joe and the enterprise, including Rock Nation, Slate Inc., and Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, reaped substantial financial rewards from plaintiff's uncompensated labor, profiting from plaintiff's creative and operational contributions without providing proper credit or compensation. Defendant intentionally withheld credit, royalties, back-end profits, and publishing interests from plaintiff, ensuring complete creative and financial control remained solely with defendant Fat Joe and the enterprise. Plaintiff unrecognized and unpaid labor thus became the silent foundation of defendant Fat Joe's commercial success, leaving plaintiff economically disadvantaged and professionally invisible. Plaintiff was recruited under the false promise of a creative partnership, but was instead systematically exploited through coercion, manipulation, and deception. Uncredited songwriting and false promises of royalties, which is pretty much self-explanatory here. Misappropriation of performance fees and per diems, which they go into detail about. In stark contrast, Fat Joe and his inner circle traveled in luxury, flying first class, staying in premium hotels, and dining lavishly at plaintiff's expense. Defendant actively maintained the deliberate financial disparity to reinforce plaintiff's economic vulnerability, dependency, and silence, ensuring compliance through economic coercion and manipulation. Fat Joe, including Rock Nation, Slate Inc., and Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, facilitated and profited from these schemes through fraudulent financial structuring and accounting practices overseen by defendant accountant Doe. Financial records were deliberately manipulated to conceal these unlawful diversions of plaintiffs' contractually obligated compensation, enabling ongoing fraudulent financial reporting, tax manipulation, and unjust enrichment of defendants. This deliberate and systematic financial exploitation represents a coordinated pattern of fraud, theft, and economic coercion that substantially enriched defendant Fat Joe and his associates at plaintiff's direct expense, causing plaintiff substantial financial harm, economic vulnerability, and emotional distress. Coercive control, psychological manipulation, and threats of harm. Fat Joe control over plaintiff extended far beyond mere financial exploitation or denial of credit. Over 16 years, defendant cultivated a deliberate environment of psychological manipulation, intimidation, and persistent threats to ensure plaintiffs' continued submission, silence, and loyalty despite ongoing abuse, exploitation, and humiliation. Fat Joe frequently warned plaintiffs with chilling explicitness, repeatedly stating, quote, "Nobody leaves Terror Squad in one piece." He often reinforced this threat by openly referencing former associates who had suffered violent reprisals after falling out of favor. For example, defendant explicitly invoked the notorious assault on Louis Cuban Link Tyban, who was viciously attacked, permanently scarred, and publicly humiliated following his departure from defendant's circle. These statements were not mere idle threats or exaggerations. They constituted explicit and calculated warnings deliberately issued to plaintiff to convey that any act of resistance, disloyalty, or demand for fair treatment would inevitably lead to severe physical harm, public disgrace, professional sabotage, or worse. Through these sustained incredible threats, defendant intentionally reinforced the message that plaintiff had no viable path to safely exit their working relationship or demand rightful compensation without facing devastating personal consequences. Defendant methodically cultivated an atmosphere where fear of violent retaliation, abandonment abroad, and career destruction permeated plaintiff's daily experience, effectively destroying any notion of autonomy or genuine choice. Plaintiff's working conditions were oppressive and unpredictable, deliberately designed to amplify his vulnerability and dependency. The defendant employed persistent verbal abuse, threats of physical violence, erratic and insufficient payment, manipulative control over travel and accommodations, and continuous humiliation. Collectively, these coercive tactics resulted in chronic emotional and psychological distress, profound anxiety, and severe trauma that continue to affect plaintiff to this day. Plaintiff was systematically denied basic security or stability, with defendant frequently threatening to strand him in foreign locations without resources or assistance. On multiple occasions, these threats became a reality, leaving plaintiff stranded and without access to adequate food, shelter, or safe transit home, further intensifying his fear, insecurity, and forced dependency. The consistent invocation of past acts of violence by defendants, such as the brutal attack on Cuban Link, was an intentional strategy. Defendant purposely leveraged these prior violent incidents to establish the credibility and immediacy of his threats, effectively placing plaintiff in a constant state of apprehension and psychological captivity. The looming threat of physical harm was not hypothetical, but concrete, continuously reinforced by complicit verbal warnings and visible reminders of prior violent acts. The cumulative psychological harm inflicted upon plaintiff by defendant's coercive methods was profound and lasting. Over 16 years, defendants sustained use of intimidation, violent threats, emotional manipulation, economic control, and forced isolation resulted in plaintiff suffering severe emotional injuries, including chronic anxiety, debilitating fear, symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress syndrome, loss of self-esteem, and lasting damage to his mental and emotional well-being. Defendant's use of violence, threats, and psychological intimidation was a calculated tactic integral to maintaining control over plaintiff and securing ongoing submission and compliance. These methods of coercion went far beyond mere workplace disputes or contractual disagreements, constituting explicit acts of extortion, intimidation, and forced labor. Each threat, warning, and act of psychological manipulation was deliberate, reinforcing defendant's dominance and perpetuating plaintiff's involuntary labor and silence. Collectively, these coercive tactics demonstrate a calculated and sustained pattern of psychological and emotional abuse, intentionally implemented by defendant Fat Joe and his associates to maintain plaintiff's exploitation, submission, and silence. Here we go with the sexual exploitation and humiliation under duress. My God, today, y'all, please run those likes up. And if you are enjoying the platform, definitely donate, girl, because the king has been working his ass off for you today. In addition to systematic financial exploitation and relentless psychological abuse, Fat Joe deliberately subjected plaintiff Dixon to repeated and severe actual coercion, manipulation, and humiliation, which further deepened defendant's total control over plaintiff's autonomy, physical safety, and labor. Throughout plaintiff's 16-year period working closely with defendant, plaintiff was routinely coerced into engaging in actual acts with women, specifically brought by defendant Fat Joe to hotel rooms and private gatherings following performances and studio events. Fat Joe frequently arranged and orchestrated these encounters, intentionally creating scenarios designed to reinforce plaintiff's complete submission. Fat Joe regularly monitored these encounters closely, frequently remaining in the room to watch, record, or provide explicit direction and command. Plaintiff did not willfully consent to participate in these acts. Instead, plaintiff submitted solely out of fear of immediate retaliation, which defendant repeatedly demonstrated would include financial punishment, professional sabotage, abandonment in foreign countries, or physical harm. On or at least one occasion, plaintiff explicitly resisted participating in a coerced sexual encounter arranged by defendant. Fat Joe immediately retaliated by canceling plaintiff's scheduled flight, deliberately stranding plaintiff without money, shelter, or support, thereby intentionally placing him in an isolated, unsafe, and highly vulnerable position abroad. These calculated and repeated acts of actual coercion served a clear purpose in defendant's enterprise, reinforcing plaintiff's ongoing subordination, obedience, and silence through humiliation, fear, and psychological dominance. Actual compliance became a condition of plaintiff's continued employment, access to essential resources, safe travel, and basic human dignity. The defendant's use of coercive SEX acts underpinned by the threat of job loss, abandonment, or physical harm meets the definition of the SEX trafficking by coercion under 18 U.S.C. Code 1591. Bitch, they are going for blood on Fat Joe ass. My God, to mother day. Actual acts were induced not by choice but by fear, dependency, and fraud. Each encounter carried an unspoken message: refuse and you lose everything. The plaintiff estimates that over 16 years he was coerced into more than 4,000 sexual acts to maintain his standing with the enterprise. The defendant used these acts not merely for gratification, but as a control mechanism by degrading plaintiff repeatedly and in front of others. He undermined plaintiff's autonomy, silenced his resistance, and made him emotionally and physically dependent on defendant's approval. The psychological toll was immense. The plaintiff developed symptoms consistent with PTSD, including flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, panic attacks, and emotional detachment. He remains in trauma-informed therapy and continues to experience debilitating anxiety. These experiences were not private or confidential. Enterprise members, including JB, Raw, Pistol Pete, and security staff, routinely witnessed and participated in these coercive dynamics. Roc Nation was assumed managerial control of defendant Fat Joe's business operations in 2017, and ample opportunity to detect, disrupt, or report these patterns of abuse. Instead, it enabled and benefited from them earning commissions, royalties, and reputational capital off the back of plaintiff silence. The forced actual conduct described in this section, coupled with the economic manipulation and verbal threat, forms a textbook example of SEX trafficking under federal law, warranting treble damages, injunctive relief, and criminal referral under 18 U.S.C. Code 1591 and 1595. Forced exhibitionism and enterprise actual culture. Let's see here. Let's find stuff that they haven't already summed up. All right. This is Cuban Link before his slashing. Cuban Link, who was physically assaulted and slashed across the face, leaving him with permanent nerve damage and, wow, visible scarring. This is him after said slashing. The reference was not abstract. Defendant reminded the plaintiff of the physical consequences that could accompany, all right, forced sexual acts under duress and surveillance. Beyond coerced sexual acts, defendant Fat Joe forced plaintiff into repeated acts of public exhibitionism designed to degrade and exert control under the guise of loyalty tests and group bonding rituals. Fat Joe routinely orchestrated sexually coercive scenarios in which plaintiff was compelled to engage in sexual acts with women brought to hotels following a live performance, tour events, and private studio sessions. These incidents were carefully arranged by defendant and occurred in environments fully controlled by him. In many instances, defendant remained present during these encounters, watching, recording, and issuing verbal commands and commentary. On one occasion in Miami, after a concert, defendant brought a woman back to his hotel suite. He then ordered plaintiff to sleep with her in front of the group, insisting the bathroom door stay open and shouting, quote, "Get your dick hard, TA." Members of the enterprise, including JB and Pistol Pete Torres, stood in the room watching and laughing, with one individual remarking, quote, "Yo, Joe, I'm not about to stand here and watch this ninja's dick." Plaintiff did not participate willfully. His compliance was driven by the credible and persistent threat of retaliation, including the loss of income, removal from the tour, or public humiliation. When plaintiff attempted to resist or assert boundaries, defendant swiftly retaliated. The plaintiff's pay was withheld, his travel plans were abruptly canceled, or he was threatened with abandonment in foreign countries without access to money, shelter, or safe passage home. These tactics were designed to instill fear and reinforce defendant's total control over plaintiff's body and behavior. Okay, he accuses Roc Nation of knowing about these things, and that the event venues involved staff under Roc Nation supervision and were discussed openly in the touring circles. Despite this, Roc Nation took no disciplinary action, performed no internal audits, and continued to collect commissions, royalties, and brand equity derived from defendants' public persona, built in part on the backs of individuals like plaintiff who were actually humiliated into submission. These acts constitute further violation under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, 18 U.S.C. Code 1589 and 1591, as well as under U.S. Code 241, conspiracy to deprive civil rights, and multiple provisions of New York and Florida sexual abuse statutes. They also serve as a racketeering predicates under USC Code 1961 1B, representing a pattern of sexual exploitation used by Fat Joe Enterprise to assert control and retaliate against non-compliance. The plaintiff's severe psychological damage from these episodes including suicidal ideation, disassociation, and complex trauma. He continues to receive treatment for PTSD symptoms and lives in constant fear of retaliation. The deliberate orchestration. Now, here's where his shit gonna fall apart at. You can't scream, I'm afraid, I got PTSD, I'm living in fear, I'm so scared, these people going to unalive me, plaintiff is going to have me harmed, but then they can literally, if Fat Joe's attorney is smart, completely screen grab your whole Instagram, your whole Twitter page, and show how you have consistently trolled Fat Joe over the years, despite your claims of being scared and shaking in your boots and, you know, piling up love sofas in front of your door in case the motherfucking Latino goons come busting through that bitch. So your shit is falling apart here, sir. Okay? We just went through your Instagram ourselves. Okay? And saw you actively trolling this person that you are also claiming you are scared of, child. All right, let's continue, because this is a lengthy lawsuit, you guys. We definitely not reading all this shit. And it's kind of repetitive in some sense. Defendant's pattern and practice of trafficking, enterprise use of violent and threatening coded language. Defendant Fat Joe and his senior associates regularly use phrases and terms that function as internal codes to direct violence, sexual coercion, intimidation, or illicit conduct, which include some of the below. The Don, which are all references to Fat Joe. Bonatches, which targets females referred to as itches. Payops, which means coerce or violent sexual acts. Colpi, to physically assault or slap. Cooling, rectum or anus. Oh, wow. Ketchup, stabbing or slashing. Martyrdom, which is to unalive them or him. Theory, which is baby mama, wife, girlfriend, and corping, to place a victim in a casket. These terms were used in text messages, in-person conversations, studio banter, and back-channel communications to direct enforcers, silence dissenters, and coordinate enterprise activities across geographic locations. The coded language was essential to maintaining the structure's sacredcy while allowing the most extreme forms of coercion and violence to be ordered and executed without exposing the enterprise to immediate scrutiny. The internal lexicon not only reflects the deliberate concealment of criminal activity, but further establishes the organized, hierarchical, and methodical nature of the enterprise's operations. Defendant's penance for exploitation was not limited to artists and collaborators. Here we go with the minors. Throughout his time working for defendant, plaintiff personally witnessed Fat Joe engage in sexual relations with children who were 15 and 16 years of age. Minor Doe 1. Minor Doe 1 is a 16-year-old Dominican girl residing in New York. In exchange for cash, clothing, and payment for her cell phone bill, defendant would get oral sex and other sexual acts performed on him by Minor Doe 1. On one occasion, while driving in New York City, Minor Doe 1 asked the defendant for money to pay for her cell phone. Being notoriously cheap, the defendant claimed to be broke. This upset Minor Doe 1, who began yelling, cursing, and screaming. Plaintiff begged defendant to pay the minor's cell phone bill, which was less than $100. Minor Doe 2. Minor Doe 2 is a Caucasian female. She is not a United States citizen. Defendant began having sexual relations with Minor Doe 2 when she was 15 years old after a concert overseas. Now, the 15-year-old might get, if there's truth to this, it's going to be more problematic legally than the 16-year-old, because the 16-year-old's sexual relationship to Joe might pass under the age of consent. But the age of consent typically starts at 16 in most states. Now, 15 is where he might have some legal issues. The defendant began having sexual relations with Minor Doe 2 when she was 15 years old after a concert overseas. Defendant flew Minor Doe 2 to New York City and Miami, Florida on multiple occasions due to Minor Doe 2's body being adolescent and not fully formed. Defendant paid for her to get a Brazilian butt lift, you guys. Minor Doe 2 eventually left defendant and is now married to a professional athlete. What the fuck? Hold on, I want to make sure that there's no graphic images in here. Okay, there's none. I just had to make sure, girl. Wow. What's going on, Deshaun? So these are pictures allegedly of Minor Doe 3 with her friends. Okay. Minor Doe 3 with her friends from high school at the same time she was being trafficked by defendant. Minor Doe 3 is a Latino female who met the defendant when she was 15 years old, turning 16. According to plaintiff, defendant was in love with Minor Doe 3. He even contemplated leaving his wife. The defendant paid all of Minor Doe 3's bills and even took her overseas to his tour stops. He brought her to Florida, would put her up in a condo he rented a few blocks from his house and his wife. In a recorded conversation, Minor Doe 3 and her 15-year-old cousin described in detail to plaintiff how inappropriate it was for defendant, who was in his late 30s at the time, to be fawning over children. And this is an alleged recorded conversation. The defendant sees no shame in his depravity towards children. Defendant Fat Joe has demonstrated a disturbing lack of remorse or discretion regarding his predatory behavior. Rather than conceal his actions, he has on multiple occasions alluded to or openly referenced actually inappropriate conduct in his public persona and artistic output. In the song titled She's My Mama, defendant delivers lyrics that, when considered in context, reflect an unhealthy and troubling fixation on underage individuals. The content of the song is explicit, suggestive, and disturbingly detailed, and defendant uses it to normalize, romanticize, or even boast about behavior that aligns with the patterns of coercion and exploitation described throughout this complaint. Plaintiff asserts that these lyrical references are not fictionalized or abstract, but form part of a larger pattern in which that Joe uses his platform and music to project, excuse, and reinforce the abuse of power and boundary violations that have marked his conduct toward plaintiff and others under his influence. In relevant part, defendant says, quote, now she was only 16. I had to nurture that, give her some growth, waited till I touched the cat. What? Told she going to have to work if she gonna get ahead. Then she drove me berserk when she gave me some head. She told me that she learned that from the corno flicks. I said, mommy, stop talking, just suck on this. I ain't say her name yet, so let's say she nothing. She nothing. Now watch me turn this nothing into something. Get it? Mommy, get in that kitchen. This is free base. Just cook it till it's hard then. These are lyrics from Fat Joe. Now she was only 16. I had to nurture that, give her some growth. Waited. So he's actively in a song talk about grooming a teenage girl and waiting till she's of age so that he could touch the cat. Now, I don't know how the hell Joe is going to defend that. I am not familiar with Joe's music like that. I think the only song I really know is Lean Back, Bitch. But are you fucking serious? And hip hop never called this out. These are songs that have been publicized, and Fat Joe has a whole fan base, and there are hip hop critics and music critics around the world, and nobody ever dealt with this. Another song called Cutting Eights. Take the trip cross town to see True. Just get the money. Don't listen. That ninja think he cute. See all this money we got. We going shopping. Louis Vuitton and Gucci. We get it popping. We hit the club on some Clico-ish. See the respect that you get from just being my bitch. Look, see them. They sick. They want to be in your shoes. That's the game that I hit her with to leave her confused. I'm just using her for paper. She want a man. I'm about to see my other bitch, but she understands. Based on information and belief, She's My Mama was written about Minor Doe 3, who confirms engaging in many of the acts outlined in the lyrics above. Furthermore, Minor Doe 3 was required to hold jewelry, dogs, and other questionable items that are illegal to be in a child's possession when she traveled with defendant. Defendant's transportation of sexual intercourse with these minors constitute violations of the following New York State, Florida, and federal laws, such as those laws here in New York's sex trafficking and Florida's unlawful sexual activity with certain minors. Also, Federal Man's Act. Defendant Joe covers up Andre Dre Christopher Lyon from Cool and Dre's statutory grape of K. Ross. Girl, here we go. This is a lot. Y'all running likes up. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I've been reading all fucking day. Run the likes up. We need likes, share. Y'all hear my damn voice getting damn hoarse. K. Rose was a 15-year-old singer signed to Epidemic Records, a label owned by Andre Dre Christopher Lyon. From the beginning of the relationship, Dre began grooming K. Rose and started having sexual encounters with the child in the studio after her parents dropped her off to record. The statutory grape of K. Rose lasted for close to a year. According to plaintiff, one night he and the defendant walked into the studio and Dre was screaming, quote, "I'm going to jail, Joe. I'm going to jail." K. Rose's parents found out I was dealing with K. Rose. According to plaintiff K. Rose's parents threatened to lock Dre up. The defendant kept saying, "Calm down, I'm going to take care of it." Based on information and belief, defendant used his burner phone to send K. Rose's parents a message. K. Rose's career fizzled out and she was rarely heard from again. Wow. Coordinated retaliation attempts by Enterprise members, Pistol Pete and Rich Dollar. Okay, we already know. He's accusing them of being pretty much old boy's hit hitmen getting people hurt on behalf of Joe, etc. I can't read all this, you guys, because I'm tired, but he goes into detail. There seems to be a transcript of a conversation involving Pistol Pete and Percy, where they're setting somebody ass up. I don't give a F, nigga. I'm a real ninja from the trenches for real. I'm not going to let him violate my ninja. Okay, these are Fat Joe's alleged goons. These are transcriptions from audios that are in the plaintiff's possession, girl. Joe might have some real motherfucking problems, bitch. And I might have to come back in a part 2 to get into some of the details that I'm not going to go over here tonight, because I'm experiencing reading fatigue. So I may come back tomorrow, girl, and we can get into these transcriptions, girl, which, wow. While actively campaigning for former Vice President Kamala Harris' presidential campaign, defendant made direct threats to plaintiff from his Instagram burner account, bitch. Fat Joe slams Latino support for Donald Trump at Kamala Harris's Allentown rally. My Latinos, where's your orgullo? Where is your pride? Defendant's disdain for current President Donald J. Trump is palatable. Numerous YouTube videos detail the level of his hate he has for the president. Okay, I stand with Joe with all of that. Okay, Fat Joe tells us Donald Trump is delusional and prays Hurricane Florence doesn't ravage the mainland like Hurricane Maria did to Puerto Rico, because he says the president already beglad the response to the one devastating storm. He provides hyperlinks to, I guess, old boys, to Fat Joe's YouTube. In the following Instagram message, defendant brags about having connections in the White House. Okay, this is an alleged message from Fat Joe's burner account. I'm going all the way. Remember that. Do you know what I know? You are crazy as up. I got you. I own you, ninja. LOL. You think so? LOL. But I'm not. Let's see. Okay, so Joe is in the white here. Connections in the White House. Who the F are you? Some washed up bum. Are you crazy? Okay, so this is a screenshot that somebody, obviously, apparently sent to Terrance from Fat Joe's burner account. I guess this person was trolling Fat Joe, and this was Fat Joe's response in his DMs to this troll. Defendant was not lying when he said he had connections at the White House, as evidenced by the one-on-one meeting he had with Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala's sitting somewhere like, bitch, now how I get in it? Donald Trump is about to have Fat Joe ass deported immediately, girl. ICE is on the way, bitch. In addition to the one-on-one meeting, then Vice President Kamala Harris defendant moderated a criminal justice panel with Vice President Harris. He had the audacity to bring one of his henchmen, Enrico Enterprise officers, Rich Player, to meet with the Vice President. My God, today, honey, did Kamala know she was surrounded, girl, by Latin goons? Upon information and belief while defendant was in the middle of moderating a criminal justice panel, he was actively using his RICO Enterprise to set up the murder of plaintiff. Defendant Fat Joe also brags about his political connections with former president. Unbeknownst to President Clinton, he unintentionally accepted and wore a pair of sneakers that donned the name of a criminal RICO. Not they bringing the president's bitch into the mix, girl, from Trump to Kamala to Clinton, girl. This is a mess. I'm gonna be honest, girl. It appears right now, girl, Blackburn did his big one, girl, on the write-up. I don't know whether he done hired some interns or what, child. But my God. Wow. Oh, girl, even done drag Eric Adams' ass up in here, girl. This is a star-studded complaint. Fat Joe political reach does not stop at the White House. In August of 2024, defendant Fat Joe was presented with a key to NYC by Mayor Eric Adams. Now, y'all know this also is right on brand for Tyrone Thickneck Blackburn. He loved to sensationalize claims and bring in other public figures to help, make shit go viral on social media, girl. So he'll throw all type of preliminary, unrelated ass shit up in here. Like, it really doesn't matter if President Clinton is wearing a pair of shoes or if Fat Joe met with Kamala, because Fat Joe is a public fucking figure, okay? He's in a lot of damn pictures and at a lot of damn events and hosted a lot of damn gigs, but this is the type of shit that Tyrone Blackburn does, okay? He intentionally tries to sensationalize shit by bringing in other public figures for no real reasons. Yes, Tyrone Blackburn is the lawyer, unfortunately, healing. Plaintiff believes the defendant, Fat Joe's confidence in openly threatening him and attempting to put a hit out on him is due to his political protection. In the following Instagram message, defendant confirms his RICO enterprise when he says, don't need to lift a finger. Quote, biggest in the game, everyone willing to do it for me, as you guys can see here in Fat Joe's alleged burner response to said troll. Plaintiff perceived the word "it" to mean that defendant is going to have him unalived. Hold on, wait. So this is a correspondence between the burner and the plaintiff. Fat Joe and the plaintiff. Wow. Plaintiff perceived the word "it" to mean that defendant was going to have him unalived. In the following message, defendant makes his intentions very clear. He intends to do bodily harm to plaintiff. Quote, ninja, you would get dragged. And 2, he is wanting the plaintiff to watch his back. Everyone is outside as he has ample opportunities to unalive the plaintiff or to have the plaintiff unalived. Quote, be very careful. We let you live. Okay. Wow. Plaintiff perceived these messages to mean the defendant was going to have him unalive or physically harmed, and plaintiff better watch his back. In the following Instagram message, defendant took his threats a step further by making an explicit threat to harm plaintiff's family, the majority of whom lives in Bronx, New York, and he asks, quote, you love your family, right? Okay, as you guys can see here. Plaintiff perceived the message to mean that defendant was going to unalive or physically harm his family. In the following Instagram message, defendant brags about strong-arming a YouTuber into removing and failing to release interviews of plaintiff where plaintiff publicly explained the harm defendant visited upon him. Business is business. Business is the game. You are not ready. Look around. Any more vids coming out? That got real quiet. What happened? Biggest in the game. Plaintiff was informed that several YouTubers received direct threats from the defendant's burner account or the burner accounts of the defendant's henchmen. In the following messages, defendant attempts to lure plaintiff to one of his RICO enterprise businesses, UPNYC, and further taunts plaintiff to lure plaintiff outside so plaintiff could get him unalived. So plaintiff outside so plaintiff can get unalived. Come to Up NYC. If you that ninja, come outside. Plaintiff believes that defendant Fat Joe is attempting to lure him outside so he can have plaintiff. Once again, we know that the plaintiff has been trolling Fat Joe over the past few years. Just more than likely, these text exchanges are Joe responding to plaintiff antagonizing him, but Fat Joe is a public figure, so him saying all these things is problematic, honey. He would have did better by just ignoring the trolling and just continuing to use the legal system. Get a PTO, get a restraining order, file a defamation suit, get a gag order, etc. But he was on his street shit, on his we don't do the po-po shit. Plaintiff believes the defendant, Fat Joe, is attempting to lure him outside so he can have plaintiff unalive or physically injured. In the following IG message, defendant saying the following: you can be with whoever, but remember everyone by themselves when they turn that corner. The statement is significant because it comes from a private conversation plaintiff had with the defendant on multiple occasions, where defendant warned plaintiff to never walk ahead of their group whenever they traveled, because you can be a party of 30, but if you walk off and turn the corner ahead of the group, then you have become a party of 1 and are susceptible to enemy attacks, as seen here. Defendant Fat Joe's confirmation that he is the one sending direct threats to plaintiff lets plaintiff know that the defendant Fat Joe and his RICO organization will stop to nothing to have plaintiff unalived. In another IG message confirming his identity, defendant informs plaintiff that plaintiff, quote, wouldn't have gone anywhere if it wasn't for defendant, aka me. All right. Couch surfer is a term defendant has used to describe plaintiff in several YouTube videos. In the following IG message, defendant subtly reminds plaintiff of the consequences of being cut from Terror Squad. As stated earlier, defendant ordered the face slashing of former Terror Squad member Cuban Link. Plaintiff believes defendant is going to have him unalived or have his face $150 slashed. The following IG message from defendant's henchman Pistol Pete's burner account Pablo Escobar guarantees that he will give plaintiff $150. That is the same Pistol Pete who promised Percy that, quote, nobody's going to stab him. Plaintiff up. The plaintiff believes that Pistol Pete is, or one of his minions would try to give him $150 if they ever run into him. Pistol Pete used several burner accounts to send direct death threats and threats of violence to plaintiff or defendant's behalf, including but not limited to Dr. Zyvac. In the following IG message, Pistol Pete confirms that Dr. Zyvac's Instagram account belongs to him, which you guys can see here. There's also voice notes. Plaintiff believes that Pistol Pete's brazen stupidity to out himself is evidence of defendant's determination to unalive or physically hurt plaintiff. In the following IG message, Pistol Pete warns plaintiff that he has 48 hours to fall bike, to lean bike, baby, as you guys can see here. And we're going to analyze all this evidence in another video. I'm too tired and exhausted to do it now. The plaintiff perceived this message as a threat that if he felt to fall back, he would be unalive. In the following IG message, Pistol Pete informs plaintiff that it doesn't matter if plaintiff was Jesus Christ with him. Plaintiff is food, and Fat Joe's Rico Enterprise will eat. My God, today, girl, I don't know why y'all be playing on the Lord's name like this. Plaintiff perceives this message as a blatant death threat, as Pistol Pete made it very clear that he intends to make you, plaintiff, pay in the worst way. Defendant completes his menacing orchestrated campaign of social media threats directed at plaintiff by asking, quote, don't you think people gotta be made an example of so others will understand not to cross? Plaintiff perceives the threat from defendant as a guarantee that he will either be unalived or physically harmed, as defendant is left with no choice but to make an example of him. These are not isolated statements. They mirror the violent enforcement practices historically employed by the enterprise to eliminate threats and enforce loyalty. Similar acts include stabbing of a rival is referred to Ketchup, the redacted of the boyfriend of defendant's child mother Brenda. Plaintiff confronted Fat Joe about this incident via Instagram Messenger, and Fat Joe via his second burner account, which is listed here, warned plaintiff to step back and to fall back. It is important to note that defendant Fat Joe never denied plaintiff's insinuation. Prior beatings and redacted were committed on the defendant's order or at his instigation. The threats and actions detailed above collectively constitute multiple violations of federal and state law and form clear predicate acts of racketeering activity, specifically the conduct of defendant Fat Joe and his senior enforcers, including the solicitation of violence against plaintiff. Girl, I remember Remy Moss violent ass, another Terror Squad member who went to prison for shooting her bestie over a stack. Girl, this is a mess. Hold on, y'all, let me see how much. Oh yeah, y'all see how much more we got to go. Look at the scroll, girl. We on 64, the 64th page of 157. Okay, so actually, I'm gonna end here. I cannot go no further. I am cooked. I am baked. So we're gonna end here. I'm gonna come back in part 2 and finish up this litigation tomorrow. Okay, probably first thing in the morning. Keep you guys this notification set to all, girl. We're going to be continuing to indulge in the details, child. This is a mess. I'm going to reserve further commentary until we get to the end of this lawsuit, child. Fat Joe, bitch, we not gonna have no celebrities after this. They're gonna remove the Holly girl. It's just gonna be Wood. It's just gonna be Wood, girl. Chef said CTV. Wait, okay. What's going on, Chef? It ain't gonna be no more Holly. She's gonna be all woods, girl. Empty ass, barren woods is what the new Hollywood gonna be. Did you get Kevin Hunter lawsuit? No, I did not get that. I got the we read, you know, like from the blogs, but no, we didn't get the actual paperwork, Chef. So if you got that too, boo, send that right on over, honey, because I would love to get into the details of Kevin Hunter's lawsuits against Sabrina Morrissey, etc. Okay, hold on, thought I'll send it. Okay, and thank you so much, Chef. We're going to get into all of that, you guys, on tomorrow. I am exhausted. You guys, I was live, critically thinking and critically entertaining, girl, earlier for hours in the Tyler Perry shit. Now we got all of this, girl. Maybe this is why damn Tyrone Blackburn is dropping the goddamn ball on Dwayne Youngblood, baby, because he too goddamn busy, bitch, you know, trying to actually be a sound lawyer. In the Fat Joe lawsuit, girl. Shout out to my baby mother Tiffany for love from Tiff. Thank you, baby Baba. Y'all know I am working, child. Thank you so much, baby mother. Okay, we got some things to get into tomorrow. Once again, make sure you guys have your notifications set to all, thumbs up, all that good jazz, child. We're going to get it cracking first thing in the morning. You guys know you can send all tea to consciouztv@gmail.com and or my DMs. And I will see you guys in the AMs. Good night.